David Giraud, everybody.
I think I'm going to start, well, I've been working for about 18 years in mostly video game industry, and I've been wanting to touch a lot of different things, which I've been able, so basically, the first thing I want to do is go a little back in time, before ZBrush, the obscure time, the Prehistoric Times. Yeah, so if you're from, I'm not that old, I guess, I'm 40 years old, but you know, in terms of digital art, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, almost 20 years is a lot of time. I mean, you realize different generation of consoles, software, everything has been going exponentially. And since ZBrush started, it's really where, for me, everything started, and I think a lot of people as well. So ZBrush, I was working on some really cool project, but you know, obviously, PS2 games, things like that. So one of the turning points in my career was there was Splinter Cell, and then there was Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. You can actually see a kind of a remake I did really quickly for a cover for the 10 years of Edge magazine in England. But basically, Prince of Persia was the first time I was able to do a lot of concepts. I mean, the art director on the project is Raphael Lacoste. It was Raphael Lacoste. And he's an amazing art director, one of the best art directors I have to work with. And what was really cool and bad at the same time is I came at the end, almost at the end of the project, and all characters had to be remade. All animations were done, and I thought, well, it's going to be interesting. So I had about 4 months, and we were 2 people for the most part. Then there was some more people added towards the end. And I started to do everything basically in pose. And I started to paint everything in the textures, and it was the first time I could really do a lot of concept directly from the models, because basically we had no time, which was a bad thing and a good thing. So obviously from there I thought doing concepts in 3D would be amazing. It's not necessarily the greatest, it's not really up to the point where it should be, but eventually I was dreaming about like a tool that you could actually sculpt. I was like, would that be crazy to actually be able to sculpt digitally? And then eventually, I've seen, well, ZBrush 1.5, I think. I was actually in Denmark at that point. We were in pre-production for Hitman Blood Money. And most of the IO Interactive games, well, all of them were obviously like PS2. They were multi-platform. But they weren't necessarily going for the next generation. The next generation was not necessarily started yet. There was some id Software. The Doom thing was starting to pop some screenshots. And people started to realize normal maps, you know, all those things would happen, very shiny things everywhere. Remember, like the render of Doom was just like, let's show like the render of the normal maps. And basically from there, I was like, okay, there's something missing. We've got normal maps now. And really early on, I went to introduce that in our pipeline. And the team wasn't ready, and I just said, well, fuck it. I'm just going to do it, and if you don't want to follow, it's fine. And I was a bit of a wild card at the time. And basically, I went ahead, and I was the lead, so I had a little more influence to do that. And then basically, I started doing some prototype with the team, and we had some normals in the game. And then from there, people wanted to actually do that in the environment. But ZBrush was not out yet. 1.5 was out, and I was starting to play with it, but there was something missing. And then I saw some amazing sculpts from Lord of the Rings, the second movie. Dave Cardwell, I think, and another artist were doing those amazing sculpts. And I was like, okay, this is the game changer we've been waiting for. So 2.0 basically, we started to do production on Hitman, no tutorials, nothing, didn't exist at the time, obviously. And I knew that was going to be the tool that was going to be the next tool that we're going to use most of the time. So 2.0 was amazing, but no perspective, no subtool, nothing like that, no hard edge, obviously, nothing like that. But it was already part of my pipeline back then. And you know, from there, basically, like from every version that happened, we give the freedom to do a lot of concepts. So, like, I'm not that prepared because I like things to be a bit flowing. So, probably I'm going to be asking if people have questions or whatever. So, I'm going to run a little bit of the portfolio thing and talk at the same time. So, it's going to be less boring. And so, it's not in order, but I think it's kind of a good thing. So what I wanted to do was not just video game. I wanted to be able to do collectibles. I wanted to do concepts. So the concept basically was my true love, and I had to switch at some point to 3D artists, like character artists. And back then, concepts and 3D were 100% separated. And there was almost no chance that you would be able to do concepts on a game or a movie or anything like that in 3D. It was out of the question. It was not something that was going to happen. And then I started to do a lot of concepts because I was like, well, it's got to be something that can be done in 3D. And then the trend actually started to happen. I remember like Avatar was one of the first movies I've seen from Scott Patton, and that's the right name, right?
What's
Scott?
the name?
Scott Patton?
Scott Patton, yes.
Yeah, like some amazing Avatar 3D concepts. I was like, okay, we are getting there. The game industry caught on a lot sooner than the video game industry. But I was like, this is the other game changer for me. I was like, I should actually jump on the wagon and make sure I got some concepts in my portfolio and continue doing that. So basically, like ZBrush for me is an amazing tool for game art, but mostly like in my heart for concepts, and now collectible, because seeing your art as a physical form is like the ultimate. It's still my art, so it still sucks for me. But seeing your things in reality just make it completely different. You start to think a bit differently. I don't know, it's weird. It's like the first time you see something printed, probably happened for a lot of you now because printers are available now, a lot more than it used to be. But for the first time I saw that, I was like, yeah, this is the other game changer. So I could see all those things happening. It was pretty amazing. So the presentation today is mostly, well, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. Hello. But I think it was a good thing because basically with busy schedule and you work for a studio, and I work for Volta, by the way, which is I don't call it an outsourcing studio. It's a service studio. Basically, we do a lot of VFX. It's a new department, and concepts, but 2D and 3D. We do game assets. Basically, anything goes. We've done some collectible as well within Volta. But it used to be mostly 2D concepts. I totally forgot what I was about to say.
2D concepts, you work at Volta.
Yeah,
what do you do
blah,
for
blah,
Volta?
Blah, yeah. But basically the bottom line is, the presentation, that's where I am. Presentation is basically about the 3D concept done within the same day. And I'm not necessarily saying like people should do speed sculpting all the time. It's nice for practice, not necessarily good on a portfolio. And something probably we're going to touch base on portfolio and all those things. The usual questions and concern of the community. But basically doing a concept within the day with colors, Keyshot, and being able to present something to the client that looks close to final is just crazy. It's just, it gives us a lot of freedom, and we're able to really break the barrier between, 2D and 3D barrier is just starting to crack completely. I think there's no way to go back. Just like the previous presentation from Joe, like going from a 3D to, after that being painted, or all the way to a 3D, it doesn't matter anymore. It's just, I think it's just changed the whole industry. Sorry again. Presentations basically do a concept within one day and Keyshot. And I use a lot of the features I prefer from Keyshot. So you're going to see that I'm not that crazy advanced like Marco and Cedric going like crazy with those things, and it's like magic. Eventually, I will catch on, maybe, but I'm kind of old school in a lot of ways where new features comes in, and Paul and the guys say, hey, you have to try that, please try that. And I'm like, sure, I'll try it, and I don't. I'm sorry. And eventually I see people using it, and then I catch on to that. But, so like, what you're going to see is the usual time lapse, because I didn't feel like doing like a live performance. I kind of wanted to keep it kind of alive, especially because it's the last presentation of the day and people are tired. And by the way, like being here, like I jump all over the place, as you see. It's my style, I guess. Being here, first, I'm honored to be invited. And just meeting like amazing people that we've seen doing stuff on the internet, in ZBrush, like legends and people that are new but doing amazing things, like really an amazing experience. And one thing that I noticed doing, I was in Portugal last week at THU. Trojan was a unicorn, and it's crazy how you realize how many people doing art. The people who kind of made it, I would say, have the same kind of speech. You know, like sacrifice of time. You know, like you have to do it. Like Furrier was saying that, and I think most of the things Furrier have been saying will reflect, and there's nothing I can do about it because that's the you know, how things are. So I don't know if at that point there's already questions, because that will kind of help me to.
Questions on the floor? I got no digital ones yet.
So basically, it's the same process as what Furrier was saying. It's basically blocking, finding shapes, and from there, you know, making mistakes all the time. And I'm not the first one saying that, but happy accidents. It's really, especially when you do something like an alien or a pure concept. Obviously, when you're doing production work, there's less happy accident because you know exactly what kind of body type or things like that. Usually, when you start production, you know, every skeleton is set, and there might be a bit less freedom. But when I start doing concepts in ZBrush, I want to start fresh from the sphere. And I'm not the only one doing that, and I think it's a really good thing. And one of the things that traditional sculptors do, and that we should do all the time, is restarting your things, restarting your anatomy. And I mean, Scott Eaton was here today. I'm not like a master of anatomy like he is, but I went to his workshop, and I mean, obviously understanding anatomy, when we get the question, what should I do just to get better at the character? Obviously, anatomy, silhouette. I mean, you get better from there. And you know, I had people showing me the portfolio and going all over the place in schools. This is render, this is speed sculpt, this is it. You know, what do you want to do? If you want to do character models and you want to do humans, even aliens and creatures, I mean, if you don't have, even to some degree, mechanical stuff, if you don't have any ideas of where things are, it's not going to work that well. And once again, everybody's been saying that, so it's not that original. Like, for example, the gears things, I do that like a lot. I mean, I was basically in auto mode because same thing as what Furrier was explaining, I use reference just to kind of get pumped up to some degree, but then I like to just shut it down completely. Shut down the phone in the morning, do things like that, and just be able to be kind of in the zone, not too influenced. Obviously, you're influenced by popular culture and things stay in your head, but you're trying to do something new and hopefully something interesting. So basically, like the whole thing was 3 hours or about 4 hours. That's I'm not quite sure, but it was kind of half a day in the morning, and I took the other half to basically do do some poly paint. And Furrier was explaining that. I'm going to talk a lot about Furrier because first of all, he's amazing, but I think we have very similar. Well, I don't do mechanical stuff as he does, not in that level anyway. And what he was explaining at some point was doing poly paint. I start poly paint sometimes sooner than that because depending on how you're going to paint it, it's going to look totally different. It's going to have a different aggressivity, or let's say you want to have a softer character, you're going to choose different colors. And like poly paint, you know, is another tool that's just amazing to do concepts and other things as well. But I mean, obviously here the focus is mostly on concepts. And by the way, if you have questions, you can ask at any point. And also, I can answer questions about not just the concept, but video games and collectible. I mean, since 2008, and the first collectible that I did was released in 2009, and thanks to Adam Ross, because he's the first one who really introduced me to doing a collectible, and he's amazing. He's an amazing sculptor as well. Sorry about that. So yeah, the first collectible that I did was the Ninja versus Snake Eyes versus Ninja from Sideshow Toys, and I mean that was amazing because like saying that you want to have something in your portfolio that will be a statue, and having an actual product in the market that was the first thing that could like open the door for the collectible business. And I'm not too deep into the collectible business as some people are full time, but I'm starting to catch on. And this is kind of a concept and collectible, and concept collectible would be the actual best. You know, doing like like some other artists are actually doing their own IP as bust or characters. So I mean, you know, like there's nothing new. It's just finding the shapes and just pushing things and just having fun with it. At some point, it looked like a bit like Ultron, so I had to, you know, go. Probably I'd have seen the Avenger like just the day before, so I had to change the design. Like, you get influenced by all those things. Like obviously, like when you try to do something more like soft spots, you're trying soft areas like around the eyes. You're trying to do, you know, more pink around the gills, and you're going to try to go for materials, and also how you sculpt the material, not just the actual material in Keyshot or ZBrush, is really going to influence how it's going to look at the end. Something shinier, something harder like plates. You know, I mean, this is not necessarily super inspired, but the idea was just to go full speed and just see what could come out of it. Any questions? Someone help me, please.
You got one here on the floor.
All right.
Live on the floor. I'm coming.
When you're doing work for collectibles rather than
I can't hear.
when you're doing work for collectibles rather than your own personal work, do you find the constraints you have to work under creatively, does it make it less enjoyable for you, or does it just change?
That's a really good question, actually. I like it. I really love doing my own things, but at some point, doing something for someone else, and especially when the client, I mean, I just finished a piece from Sideshow that I can't show, and I'm probably going to do a new one starting like in 2 days. We'll see, probably.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will.
And you know, I just finished some stuff from DC Collectible and XM Studios. And it's really cool because like a lot of the time you have to do a bit of the concept, even though it's a well-known character, well-known characters. They usually want you to have kind of your own twist on it to some degree. Sometimes it's maybe less, sometimes a little bit more. And when, for example, Sideshow, if you're able to do concept as well, they have amazing artists. I mean, the team that works on site, but also all the freelancers that work with them, like Martin Canale. Actually, Martin Canale, I never met him in real life, but first of all, amazing sculptor. But he was also super generous because he did that tutorial on cut and keys, the engineering part, which is cut and keys, which was unknown to me. I was really scared of it. And he posted that amazing tutorial on cuts and keys that you should all look for. And it's basically made everything very simple for cuts and keys. I've been using that technique for all the statues I have to engineer. So to go back to the question, it's basically, they're equally interesting. And the fact that if you have a good art director that's pushing you in the right direction, it's very rewarding because you're going to get better from that. If you listen to the art director, I mean, I know sometimes it's not easy, like the relationship with art directors, but sometimes they have a vision and you're not quite sure that you see it yet, but when they push you in the right direction, you just get better. And so doing personal work is super important because most of the stuff I've been doing for the past years, I have entire projects that I've never been able to show. And obviously when you work 40 hours plus, and I'm saying plus, on games, you spend full days, so your work can be quite accomplished. The problem when you do concepts or personal work, you have to find all that experience that you acquired. They're going to help you to speed it up, but you can't polish things as much as the production work. You know, like if you're doing portfolio or fun stuff, it's got to be like all the way I sculpt things. It's so basic. And sometimes, if it's concept, I don't really need more than that, and I have some little tricks I'm going to show actually, like the little brush that I used at the contest and that people were interested. I'm actually going to show how to do that kind of brush really quickly in ZBrush. And it's very old school, but it's so old school that people think it's new school, right?
Yeah. We got a question again here from the floor.
Yeah, I don't know if I answered the first question correctly.
It was good. You liked it. It was good.
Because it was crazy.
You came around to it.
Yeah, it's exhausting for you guys.
You mentioned that there was kind of like your first collectible bust that you did was kind of like a transition into that, and you starting in games and getting into collectibles. Can you talk a little bit more about how you made that jump, and like was it something you had always wanted to do, or
From collectible to games to collectible?
Yeah.
Well, actually, Adam was in Montreal. There was this event called Adapt, and he was a speaker, and I think he was doing a lot of things for McFarlane. And I was like the soccer fanboy going to, hey man, could I get some work from you? And he was a really cool guy, and he was like, hey, sure. Well, just we'll get in touch. So that's how it started. It's like really putting yourself forward and trying not to be too much of a fanboy. And I don't know. It's just how it started. Like all of us. It's just opportunities. Just people give you a chance. I mean, you're obviously trying to show a good portfolio as well. So it's a mixed thing. I mean, obviously you have to work really hard on your portfolio and be able to show something. But it's also, we tend to forget it's the human contact. It's like you will want to work with someone that's communicating well and that you like, obviously. So, putting yourself forward and being polite, all those things, I guess. Being Canadian, polite.
Hey. The Snake Eyes was the first one you did? Was the Snake Eyes?
Snake Eyes is the first commercial one I did.
Yeah.
The first one I ever did was, I was on Hitman Blood Money and ZBrush 2.0, and I happened to see it, at some convention, there was a 3D printer, and they had some little things, and and I knew it existed for inverse engineering and mechanical parts, all that stuff, but I was like, ZBrush, printers, yes. And it really happened. The marriage happened, and it's a happy marriage, right?
Yeah.
It's an amazing marriage with kids, plenty of kids.
You were the kids, though.
Yeah.
We are the kids.
So
Is that a song from the 80s?
So I mean that's how things happen. And the first real commercial one was the Snake Eyes, and then there was the boss from Magneto and Colossus, and I mean some of my all-time favorites. I mean I grew up with John Byrne and like all the comic books and Wolverine, X-Men. Like I'm a geek. I'm a pure geek. And French comics, all the usual stuff, I guess.
You got another question here on the floor. They're coming up hot now. Hold on, let me get there.
I just saw in the time lapse, it looked like, did you paint a specular map, like as its own? Looked like you were using just black and white paint. It was separate from the actual paint job.
I'm not sure. The question was.
So in the time lapse, you did UVs and then you were painting black and white. So he's asking, were you painting a specular map there?
Yes. I wanted to go really quickly and just get some specs, some all kind of effects you can get in Keyshot. But then I use automatic UVs for the concept, as you could see, and basically just being able to get the poly paints really quickly, specular, albedo or diffuse, whatever you want to call it, and basically putting it in there. And then you can really play around in Keyshot and have something that's it's quite powerful. So okay, So I just wanted to show like just the actual model of the Witchblade. So I mean, thanks to the guy from XM and like all the opportunities and the work that I get. It's a kind of outside of work. The only thing I do outside of work is collectible. I kind of put a cap on other contracts. You have to you choose your battles, right? And knowing is half of the battle, apparently.
G.I. Joe.
Yes. So there's one thing that I've been doing in Keyshot since I started to play on the demo. Like the box modeling, all those things in ZBrush, I think they look amazing, but I had to once again choose my battles. And one of the things I wanted to push in a concept from ZBrush was to be able to do renders really quickly. And I mean, you could still do a lot of really good renders in ZBrush, but there's something about Keyshot that just makes it a little more interesting. And the really interesting part for me is getting objects to light. And it's not new, but the fact that you can do it directly in ZBrush and send it to Keyshot, you can try a lot of different things. You can do a lot of different passes. And so you don't have to do passes. You can also do the whole character could be, you could do a VR. So I don't necessarily go a lot in Photoshop just to paint over. I really just go with passes, and sometimes I try to get less passes, just almost pure render result. That way I can do a lot of turnarounds and things like that. So it's quite simple. Like the passes for the concept, it's basically getting Usually I do just a bunch of passes, and I end up using maybe 2 or 3 at the end, but I just want to have like an option. I really go for that kind of harsher light, and there's actually in an environment in Keyshot, if you want to have something that's quite simple to, well, that's actually very flat, and the materials didn't follow, but you can see it's quite bland. It doesn't have like all the bang, you know. You could really do a lot more. So doing those quick passes in Keyshot really helped just to bring, you know, some life and put some dimension into your character. And with the polypaint, it's just also quite dark. So one of the, I'm not necessarily like using spatial HDR. I'm Mr. Default, so default ZBrush. I make some custom brushes, but nothing crazy. There's the damn standard, there's all those brushes and move tools and all those things. But one of the things I like to do is, from default, just get the best out of the software. And usually, you get a lot of stuff that's interesting. But basically, there's a shadow pass HDR. And by changing, you can really get light from under, light from above, like that. It's super simple to set up. So, you know, if the goal of the presentation is also efficiency. You want to be able to switch in Photoshop different lighting, and you can really just send different versions. I didn't really go on different version of the actual model, because obviously you could do a lot of things going back and forth into ZBrush and Keyshot, and basically go for horns, go for whatever you want, and give several versions to the client, because usually if you do concepts, you don't show one version, you show many different versions, color schemes, and things like that. So, you know, kind of not a clown pass, but more like a selection pass, and experimenting, and experimentation is all about what you can do in ZBrush in concept, but also with Keyshot, like trying different lights. And a lot of the time I do a lot of tries, and it just doesn't quite do it, but then it's just interesting to try different things. And if the client was like, yeah, I don't know, it's missing some blue, there you go, you get some blue. So eyes, you know, like, just getting some basic ideas out. Maybe it's a dragon guy or it's an aqua guy. Who cares? Let's just put some effects there. So like, it's really dark, so you can't see much. But basically, it's just a Fresnel pass, just using the fabric material with just some simple lighting. And you can build like some really one of the things I like to do the most in Keyshot is also using basic shapes in ZBrush, and basically building kind of a lighting studio. And it's a really powerful a tool. It's quite simple once again, but so the big advantage is I can really play around. And what I like to do is I shut down the environment completely, the HDR, because then I can't really see what I'm doing, and I really play around with the planes that I created in ZBrush. I'm just going to activate the lighting as a visible object, visible to camera. And that's really cool too, because sometimes an object will emit too much light or will be too bright. And sometimes you just want to keep the reflection from it or duplicate the object, and then you get something that's cool and glowing, but not too glowy, and generates a light. And also, when you do those kind of effects into some kind of spaceman or whatever, you want to have all those LED lights or whatever. Like being able to get, just from a sphere or whatever object, to get those lighting, you can really play around and go for something very contrasty and very deep. Actually, one good example, I guess, is it's not by any means like a super good piece, but the interesting about that one that you already saw was doing like a really quick kind of a redesign thing, but keeping the old style, and be able to use the lights right away. You could really play around and getting those crazy contrasts. So this is like a lunch break, and maybe 2 or 3 lunch breaks. I don't remember exactly, but I was having fun with it, and like just playing with the consistency. Like very quickly, if you duplicate those objects in ZBrush, you can create this outside of a lens, and you can play around with just multiple lenses or whatever. Put an object in there that's actually a shape. like that, and really quickly you have some very, very interesting things, and you can play around with it. And there's a little bit of Photoshop, obviously, with the effects and stuff like that, but and also like all the scratches. You could also do it as a texture, but when it's just a concept, you want to get the idea out of the door and just get a little bit of weathering or whatever. And you could go crazy when the client actually, is okay with the concept. You can really push it to a final model, and just it could be a game model. That's really the cool thing about the whole pipeline. Is usually if I start to do a character and it's approved, I can do the concept when I'm lucky. I don't always do the whole thing, but sometimes if I'm lucky, I can do the concept, the final model, high-res model, with topology, all those things, and polypaint, and you can also from there pose it in ZBrush and do collectible as well. And when you know like the rules of printing, like being watertight and have a certain size, you can still design things for video games and cinematics, but you can also think very quickly how you can make the piece that could be splitted to be collectible. So very quickly, like when I was doing one of the projects I worked on that was really cool and it got canceled was from THQ, and really quickly I had a new team, like amazing guys like Marco, actually, it was his first job, and Cedric was there, and Jason Mark, and Jan Lee, and Jared, and I'm missing someone. But anyway, like, great team, and basically really quickly we started to do all concepts. And some guys were comfortable with it, some guys were not comfortable with it, but we started to do kind of those characters for that world and just having fun with it. And basically the idea was just to present not just the character models to headquarters, but also part of the presentation was going to be the printed models. So when they arrive in the room, they get those printed models, and the characters are there, and they also like on screen. It could be animated, and so it's a very powerful tool as well. I did that at one point at EA, and part of the presentation we actually gave the character to the execs out of the box, and it was kind of obviously they knew it existed, but it's kind of a new impact. I know like the movies do that a lot, like legacy effects and things like that. They got printers. For the game industry, it's kind of unheard of to sell like a project through kind of a collectible, but it really makes people excited, and from there, when you get people excited on the concept, and they will start to have ideas, so it becomes very collaborative, because from there they will have an idea and they will tell you about it, and then you'll go, that's amazing, I could do that, and bouncing those ideas back and forth makes the product more fun and just it's got more value. So like, it's also one of the strong points of ZBrush is because it's so flexible. If you do collectible, you can decide, even if the product is not the video game or whatever, it doesn't matter. You have this range of products you can get from the same model.
Go ahead.
I was just curious if you could show us the final comp for that piece that you had in Keyshot.
Oh yeah. No.
No.
The final, yeah, okay, yeah, that's actually a good point. Thank you very much. It's kind of the final. You see, like sometimes I get so not caught into details that it's not that detail, because I go for primary and secondary and whatever. Blah, blah, blah. But details really last for me, and sometimes it's quite rough because it's somewhat irrelevant. Because first of all, you can do really quickly a pass for skin pores and things like that. And you can also do it in post-production, like in Photoshop. So I really tend to focus on that shape and colors and things like that. So for example, what I was explaining a little bit earlier is that playing with those different textures that I did quickly in ZBrush is just getting something different, just to show to the client. It's not like crazy different, but just playing around with different passes in Photoshop and go for maybe a darker look, just to get the emissive. It's not a true emissive because I took a shortcut. I basically do indeed 100%, the materials, the self-elimination, and just you can comp it inside Photoshop. Okay, those are forbidden. They're tool back 2 models. No, I'm kidding. But the thing is, I'm still going to show it because basically, as much as Keyshot is an amazing product, since I've been working in the game industry, having also since Toolbag is also supporting the vertex paint, you can actually do a lot of things from ZBrush. So it's really good because you can do a lot of early testing directly also on your tool while you're real-time scene. So you can really experiment with those textures really early on, from a concept to a game res model that you could import into Unreal or whatever other engine. So it's really powerful. And one thing I do in concepts in production, and it's been I think it's been a trend, and people have been doing it more and more, is basically getting kind of a dummy model with pre-skinned, and really quickly just change the skeleton so you still have the animation that you know, and basically you can really just play around with ZBrush, and in a very quick manner you can just play with shapes, and you can send it to the animator, and the animator can actually be part of the process in concept, and that's, for me, that's the game changer. If you do archetypes and different creatures, if you're able to send that character within the same day, sometime within the same morning, then the animator first of all feels that it's part of the concept, which is actually true, and his performance is going to reflect the concept as well. So it becomes very dynamic, and it's like this back and forth that happens a lot earlier than usual. And that's one of the things I've been trying to push as well. And and the animator is going to help you also to figure out all those things, but it makes it a more powerful concept, because it's also technically working in the engine within a few days. And not perfect and polished, but...
There's a question here under the hot red lamp.
Hi.
Could we get the volume of the microphone a little louder, because I'm not
Hi.
hearing it? Oh.
Is that good? Sorry.
Hello. Hello.
I had a question. So you polypainted in some of different lighting tests, like the emissive lighting under the gills was like something that you tried, and you did some other things just straight in polypaint. And I had a question, when you're trying to get like the final look of a shot, how much do you rely on painting directly, like painting on lighting effects or stuff like that, or relying on the materials of the render in Keyshot to get what you want?
Could you summarize the question?
Painting the lighting and color in directly, or applying the materials in Keyshot or the renderer to get the look that you want?
What's the best?
Well, like how much do you do both? I mean, like,
it's actually very organic. Sometimes there's a material in ZBrush, one of those matte caps that you can tweak or whatever, and it's going to be kind of exactly what you want in Keyshot. So sometimes you're going to use almost like 100% of that, and add a little bit of the, when you go into Fresnel, and once again, Keyshot seems to be crashing, but you can basically give it some real physical property like reflection. And then the HDR will reflect on it, so you get the best of both worlds. You get a matte cap, which is kind of fake, and you get real real simulated physical effects in Keyshot. So you can really calibrate the materials just to get the best out of both softwares. And the polypaint, sometimes you don't need it, sometimes you might need it, and you can experiment with how much you see it. And sometimes I don't use the matte caps, but most of the time I do, because it renders just quicker, and you can really fake some translucency. And because if you do concept, I did that. The pass I did for the skin, actually, I used the real SSS, and it took me more time for that pass to actually do the whole concept with polypaint. It was like 5 hours or 6 hours of render just for that pass. But when I use the materials, and they have a property that looks more translucent, and I can really play around with it and just fake it. And like within a few minutes, it's going to render, and I'm going to be able to play around with the layers. But that's the idea. Not just to go in Photoshop, not just to go in ZBrush, but to go back and forth. I don't know. I have no idea if I'm answering the question correctly.
Hey, you're the boss, man. You've been around.
Hello.
Yeah, you can say that. That's fine.
Any...
You're in charge here. I want you to say it with me. You're in charge here. I'm in charge here. I used to write that on the board when I was like a younger
I think
kid.
maybe, I don't know if people are interested in knowing those old school brushes, tricks. People love tricks, right?
You want to see some tricks or some treats? How about some tricks?
Tricks. Okay.
10 minutes? 10 minutes?
The amazing old school trick, which is probably well known, is basically if you have a plane, and not like an airplane, but if you have a plane, it's basically zero in the world. So what's going to happen is, if you do a shape in there, you're going to be able to grab it with MRGB, I don't remember even the name. What's the MRGB grabber? MRGB grabber? The MRGB, shit, I guess. Z grabber, yeah. Yeah. No. No. So you have to make a polyplane, obviously, but from that plane, it's, once again, super old school. You just subdivide it to enough resolution, and basically you can start just not doing the right thing. I'm not using the right object. Okay. So, no, maybe not 4 million. It's not really necessary for that kind of brush. So the magic brush from yesterday, I'm going to remake it for you, and you're going to be amazed. Not. It's about that simple. You don't see anything right now, but yeah. I'm going to try just to show you. So you basically just play around with the, you sculpt your shape in, you make sure that everything's at 0, and you can basically play around and do something super quick. And like, I'm talking really, really quick. I could go as far as I want. And you can also use a first brush and add like a screw and do a lot of different things. So like very quickly, you end up having those brushes that are super simple, super quick to do. You know, you can go standard, bam, drag rectangle. You use like alphas, amazing. And basically do like a quick screw thing in about 5 minutes.
Bam!
Bam. Who cares? Like, it's just whatever. But the interesting thing from there is whatever you're going to grab in that position with MRG ZBrush.
Very official. Very official.
Like it. I think you want to get the whole the whole thing basically in full screen. Like it's an old trick, and I haven't done it in a while, so there's some things I might forget. So bear with me, please. What's the ultimate cover?
Yes.
Where? Oh, here. It's 15. No. Do not switch. Okay, I'm gonna go numerical input. So basically from there, you can have a modifier, and I think you just basically go kind of like that with the shift, just to have a perfect square crop. You can actually go smaller. You don't have to go crazy like that. And what's going to happen is going to generate an alpha. But the problem is, you notice, basically, the screw is going inside, so it's not going to work because the alpha is going to actually do the opposite of what I want. And I got a crazy trick. Are you ready for that? It's not really that great.
I'm ready.
You go on the other side. Well, now it's not an object anymore, so I have to, okay. I drag it again. And I go double side. Ooh. If I can find it.
Display properties.
Display. I need you at home, actually. Could you work with me? Like, you can tell me about?
Right there. There you go.
Double. And then what you do is you basically grab the opposite. And then you'll get, maybe that right now the brush is a little too crazy, so it's going a little too much inward. But you do the same thing again. MRZB grabber. It's getting better. And from there, you have it's actually probably, the plane is probably not at 0, but you see, right now I have this depth map. Let's try it. It's crazy. So you can try drag rectangle. I can change the actual alpha directly in there and just get more black. Modify intensity. Yeah, so even if it's not perfect, you can really tweak it with intensity, contrast. There you go. And if everything went well, hold on.
Wait for it.
Wait, no.
Wait for it.
You have to change the stroke, the curve, the focal shift, I think. Right now the alpha is just too crazy, so I have to go back and contrast. That's a good thing, you know, it's just showing you that it's quick, just not that quick. But you get the point. And when the settings are right, basically what you get is a perfect shape that you can reuse. And you can play around with the intensity. And like you see right now, probably the screw was a little too deep, but you can do a lot of different shapes. So, I mean, you can start to design also with a lot of the shapes. Once you have something that's not too bad in ZBrush in terms of something clean, you can start to add those little details. And what I like to do is go crazy and just sometimes go in different angle and start to, like try different things and blend in and go into morph. There's brushes that I created years ago, and I still use them today for concept because they're super simple with lines. For example, I've got one that's here, and that's that one. And as you can see here, it's super simple. But from there, I'm really able just to play around with it. If you go like morph target, store, very quickly, I get some shapes popping. Like right now, it's just nothing good, but then when you start to play around with it like that, and don't eat too much because you're going to go blind. Nobody got it.
You got a couple minutes left, just so you know.
All right. So basically, you can start just to, you see like, you can get something maybe interesting that might be something that you want, getting some noise in there, and you can use the morph target, the morph a brush, and recover what you had before and just get the best of the happy accident made from that simple brush. So I mean, I don't know if the way I showed the simple brush, and it's really powerful because you use like a few lines, a few things, and you go in different angles, and very, very quickly morphing back things into place. You kind of goes crazy. You just find new shapes. And one thing I said at THQ is one really important thing is just using your brain, not just like thinking, but not thinking. And I'm going to explain. It's really important not to think. Just do like me. Now, basically, when you see clouds in the sky, you see patterns in tiles. Well, and your brain is always working. We've been hardwired to actually recognize faces and see all kind of shapes. So going back and playing around with those shapes and making mistakes or happy accident, then you can see something appearing and you can really exploit it. So like sometimes just not thinking too much and just, like a lot of people say, you could go back, go in thumbnail mode, you're trying different things. The shapes can go crazy. And if you use the same brush in negative or positive, you're going to get something completely different. Then you can play around and just create some new shape. Right now, it looks like nothing, but I think you get the point. Actually, using like some symmetry, residual symmetry, you could create some really interesting things and pattern. You can use something more mechanical, more organic, but that's I don't think we have a lot of time left, right?
All right, David Giraud, everybody.